Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Red Circle, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, also the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. Also want to mention, in the coming days, we will have a new way to get to us. Off the Floor is moving to Discord. The Windows service has been discontinued. That was beyond our control. Discord is going to have a lot of different options for you, so make sure you check that out. We'll be promoting it here and on the Five Reasons Twitter handle. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne.
Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Alex Toledo, you can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And now we start with one of our new segments.
And now on Five on the Floor, it's time for the Gamer of the Night, sponsored by Rock Esports Center, the place to eat, drink, and play all day. Host your next birthday party with them. Located at 15305 South Dixie Highway in Palmetto Bay. They've got a 5,500 square foot state-of-the-art center equipped with all the high-end power. Play all-day passes available for just $25, but if you mention Five Reasons, it's just $20. So mention Five Reasons or 5RSN. You get to play all day for $20. And now, the Gamer of the Night.
All right, one choice for the Miami Heat tonight, even though they lost 115 to 109 to the Milwaukee Bucks, dropping to 1-3 on the season. But it's Tyler Herro, 12 of 20 from the field, 41 minutes, 33 points, 8 rebounds. 3 assists. There was a sequence where he had a couple of turnovers in a row, and I know people are going to point to that old stat that I used to push out, that when Tyler scores a lot, they lose. But them losing tonight was not his fault. So let's make that very clear from the beginning. He kept them in it, and, well, he got them back in it, actually, is what he did, because he was out there with a bench unit at the end of the game, which Eric Spoelstra rode to the finish, which is something we know that Eric will do when there's a second unit that's playing well. He did not bring his starters back in. We will get back to why in a second, and specifically who did not come in, because I think that part is most interesting. But basically, Tyler playing with Josh Richardson, Orlando Robinson, Nikola Jovic, and Duncan Robinson cut this thing all the way down to 6 at the end of the game when it had been in the 20s. So Tyler deserves a lot of credit for that. Again, we've talked about his inefficiency at the start of the season. 12 of 20 is not inefficient. So he played at a much higher level tonight. Actually, 12 of 21 is what he finished, but still 35 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. I just did not refresh at the very end. Brady, what did you like best about Tyler's performance tonight?
Yeah, well, I guess other than that stretch that you mentioned with the 2 quick turnovers, like everything was under control to me. Just everything in the pick and rolls, like after a game where it was like just an absolute mess in general against Minnesota. He just came out and just found his spots, which he does very well against Milwaukee, which he does very well against drop. But he basically, I want to go back and look at, I think at least half of his shots were floaters. Probably more than half of his shots were floaters. Like he just kept getting to it. And it was like, okay, if it's going to be there and you're not going to adjust, I'm just going to keep getting to it. And then he got to the line 10 times. And probably half of those were the defense reacting to his floater, was them overplaying and being on his back and running into him and him getting into those shots. So I just thought his overall control there was huge. And he just, you mentioned him being the only starter out there late. Like he was the only one that felt like he was within the offense. Like he was the only one that felt like he was involved in the offense. And that's not because he had the ball in his hands most. That would just felt like an overall thing. He had some overall cuts with that backup kind of the late lineup that he got to, and all of that stuff was just necessary because Jovic had the ball in his hands more. But I thought it was a really good game from Tyler. I thought it was good for him personally against this team in that building, against this player. But obviously it doesn't matter when you're not able to win. But it really was, until that point, it was Tyler and looking around for who else. Like, who else is going to help him at this point? He just needed somebody else. Or maybe not shooting, or I know the numbers got a little adjusted because of the late run. They ended up getting up to 38% from 3, which was not the case most of the game. It was mid-20s, I think, probably later in the third quarter. So like if you don't have the shooting and you don't have a secondary wingman, like I don't want to ever hear, especially on a night like tonight, that the Tyler Herro scoring 35 in a loss thing. It's just pointless because if Tyler Herro doesn't do a lot of that, they're getting blown out by 50 because that's how bad the offense looked when it wasn't being involved through Tyler Herro.
You're muted.
All right, so I know. Well, I think you muted me. But
Well, I wanted to protect the show from an echo.
Well, I understand that. You mentioned that he looked like he was out there alone. So let's at least establish something. Again, we're getting used to this new format, and this is the first time that I've done this. Who was not out there with him? Because there were two people not out there with him today who are key players for the Heat. One is Bam Adebayo, who was absent with a hip injury. We'll get more into that. We'll get more into that with the Eric Rubenstein injury report later, but I have to mention it here.
Okay.
And the second player who was not out there tonight was Jimmy Butler, even though he played. Alex, what's going on with Jimmy? Because now we're 4 games into the season. He missed the preseason with the dental issue. He was okay, I thought, in the opener. Not super impactful, but certainly good enough against Detroit. Then against Boston, he coasted in a place that he typically does not coast, even in the regular season. Doesn't play in Minnesota, which has become a ritual thing on the second night of a back-to-back for him. And then tonight, 29 minutes, 4 of 11, 1 of 2 from 3. He made 1 from the corner, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 13 points, no fouls. Didn't come back in the fourth. Didn't make a defensive play that I can really remember, which is odd for him. Concern is too strong a word. We know Jimmy doesn't take the regular season as seriously as he takes the playoffs. It's early in the year. But if I thought he was going to get up for 2 games, it would be in Boston and in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's stars, and it's crazy. We've gotten, 7 minutes into this episode and not mentioned Dame Lillard, which was the whole point of this whole thing tonight. But, I mean, Dame had 25 on 7 of 14 shooting, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 of 7 from 3. He was good. He wasn't great. Giannis had 33 and 7. Not the usual defenders who would be on Giannis, particularly with Bam out tonight. We'll touch on that more as we go forward. But we got to go to Jimmy because, I mean, they can't win. I mean, like I said, the Tyler had 35, Duncan Robinson had 15, and Jimmy had 13.
Yep.
He was outscored by Drew Smith at points of the game the other night. Like, what's going on here?
It's hard to give one reason for this, really. Like, it's hard to not go back to, he doesn't take the regular season very seriously. And it feels like as time goes on, we're seeing it more and more. Because like you said, we've seen him come out and show out for, big matchups like this in the regular season before. And not necessarily to like playoff Jimmy level, but where he's playing a high impact game and you notice him out there. And I think that's exactly it, is that you're not really noticing him out there right now. Just between this game, the Celtics game, it's disheartening. It's not that I'm concerned or anything like that. It's just kind of disheartening after the way the summer played out. It's disheartening for us who are trying to keep, the fans entertained, and Jimmy is out there just kind of going through the motions to start the season. I completely understand why, and I was defending his strategy on Playback tonight, by the way, playback.tv/5RSN. They got real animated in there, and that comeback was real fun to watch with everybody. But as far as Jimmy goes, like, they need more from him, and therein lies the problem, because he is not trying to play at that level. I think he's very much just trying to get through it, and it's not an excuse, because he needs to be better for them to even get to the playoffs, right? Like, he can't be playing at the level that he's playing at right now and expect for them to be in the playoffs. Like, even though they made it as the 7th seed last year, that last stretch of the season, he really turned it up. And that's saying something for a guy who usually doesn't until like right towards the end. He turned it up a little bit earlier last season, and now we're right back towards the beginning of that famous Jimmy calendar that we've been seeing going around online for years. Like, he's at that point where it's just very not impressive, except it's at a lower level than what we've seen in the past. And it's not, again, I'm not concerned. They need him to be better. It's just as simple as that, because Tyler gave you more than enough tonight, like from a scoring perspective. And I think anybody could have seen that coming when it comes to, the matchup that he's getting, the fact that he's playing against Lillard and Beasley. like he loves playing against the Bucks, and their defense got worse. I think we all kind of expected a big night from Tyler, but like they didn't have enough from their starters, and then they had this. It wasn't even really their bench unit because they're so depleted right now. It's like a C+ unit is how I was calling it, because they had Tyler out there, they had Orlando Robinson out there, they had Duncan out there. At one point it was Jaquez, then it was Jovic. Just very weird stuff going on, and that lineup, brought him back in the game against most of the Bucs starters. Like it was such a weird game, and then Spo didn't bring him back in. It wasn't all Tyler. Tyler was easily the best player for them tonight. I thought that unit as a whole played well to bring them back from like whatever it was, down 25 to as close as 6 points. So shout out Tyler, shout out everybody else for doing their thing. Jimmy let them down. Like it's just no other way to put it.
Well, that's now the second game that we've been able to say that, or didn't really want to say that, but have to say that. And we talk about the other guys that are out right now, and that's leading to some of this inconsistency, obviously, when you don't have top wing defenders like Haywood, like Caleb. Josh came back tonight. We'll get into his performance a little bit more, I think, in the injury report segment, because he did return from injury. But my thing is this, okay? I'm not going to read too much into the vibe type stuff right now. Like, I know we were on playback and fans are like, Jimmy's unhappy because they didn't add Dame. I don't think that's what this is. Okay, I don't. But I do think there is a real risk here of waiting too long to turn it up. I'm not saying game 4 is the place, but I do not think that this can be a sometime around the All-Star break type thing with this type of team. There's a certain fragility to this group, because there are some new parts that are trying to find their roles, and also because there is some disappointment for what did not happen in the offseason, which, again, we saw on the other side today. And if you have Jimmy kind of coasting in a lot of these games, not being impactful, players are going to take their cues from that. And you don't have Bam. Tyler has been up and down until tonight. Again, was better against Boston and Milwaukee, the two premium teams that they've played so far. Tyler was better in those two games than Jimmy was. And there's this transition also to Tyler getting this very high usage, a ton of shots. And it does seem like Spo's trying to stagger them in terms of not playing them too much together. We've talked about how their connection, it does not seem to be ideal. These are all like minor concern points for me right now that could start to add up to something more significant if we're still seeing this in the 10th, 15th, 20th game, Brady. That's you can really make a case. Like, Jimmy was a big reason they were not competitive tonight for the first 3 quarters, because there is so much that he's asked to do, and he's kind of doing it on like a very monotone sort of level right now. It's not enough.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you the question, because we always use the word coasting, but I don't even know if that's the right word with him right now. And I was like trying to figure out like what the right word is to even describe what we were seeing, because you're right. It was like, it kind of got them out of what they wanted to get to. And I'm not even saying that in a way that he's messing up their offense in any way. And it's also because when he was out and they played in Minnesota, it was just as bad. But you see, like, how the smoothest the offensive has looked in probably 3 games was when that lineup was in, and they were just moving around and running around and playing fast. And Jovic is getting down the floor with 23 seconds left on the shot clock, it felt, and Duncan sprinting off of handoffs. Like, I don't know. The offense just seems too stagnant, and maybe that's to your point of the Jimmy Herro kind of playing off each other in that way. But then you kind of see when Tyler's the only one really attacking and finding his spots, and Jimmy is kind of floating. Maybe you try to look to like try to stagger Tyler and Bam a little bit more instead of Tyler and Jimmy, because he's a guy that obviously is going to rely on a lot of the role players. And I think you're seeing, like, even there was so many attacks from Jimmy, specifically like in that third quarter. He would like get to his spot and then like jump in the air and do that thing where he passes out to the corner or the wing. And it was like, okay, like this, we know what game this is going to be. And even when he'd have like, there was moments where he'd drive and I'm like, okay, he's going to get to a spot here. He would like do the thing where he tries to draw a foul and like jump into somebody when I'm like, I don't think you really needed to do that at that point. Like, I don't know. It just felt like there was a lot of things out of sorts, and that just got them. It really did just get them out of a rhythm. So, but I will ask you, because we do use that word all the time, coasting. Do you think that's the right word of what we're seeing? Is it similar to past seasons when he's coasting, or is this a different adjective or description?
I think it's I probably used the wrong word there, because I don't know that he's intentionally coasting right now. know that for sure. And again, I'm not reading into it, even if he is
Going through the motions.
Not in the fourth game of the season. But what I will say is that we are seeing the value of playing in a preseason game at some point. I think, he comes in, he's not the only one who struggled in their first game. I mean, and now this is not his first game. Okay. But again, I thought he was okay in the season opener against Detroit. I didn't think, I would say maybe a B-, C+ kind of for Jimmy, even for regular season. And he's been in something less than that against both Boston and Milwaukee, and then didn't play in one other. But we also saw other guys who came back. I mean, Caleb was rusty in his first game back for sure, and then went out after that. Josh, we'll talk about him in a second. He had some up and down moments tonight. So there's part of this that there is a ramp up, and Jimmy knows how to ramp up better than anybody else on this team. These were two regular season games of some significance, not great significance, but some significance. And the Boston game, you certainly can make the case. If he plays better, they win. There's no question. Like, they did enough else, and I didn't think the Celtics played that well.
And they had Bam that game.
Right, they had Bam. Right, exactly. In this game, they didn't have Bam. They were going to be scrambling from the very beginning, and then they kind of get what is a somewhat fluky run, as Alex was talking about, where they're going against the starters and they're playing one starter, and they just found something with a combination. And Spo has found that kind of thing before, and I will tell you that almost never ends up winning. It's typically like Spo will ride it, and I think he should, actually. I know there's some disagreement about that. We're going to talk about that in a second here, too. But he will ride a unit. Like, he's had games where he's played all subs to get back in a game, and then it's gone 2 overtimes, and he hasn't made a sub. Like, he will go with the group that keeps them in it or gets them back in it. And I don't know. Do you guys think, before I go on to the next thing, because I want to get to the other 2 parts of this podcast here, so let's do this quickly. But do either of you guys think he should have brought Jimmy back in the fourth?
I'll just say this real quickly. I just think he sends it sends a message. Like, even if you're not going to win it either way, and I'm not saying he's trying to send a message to Jimmy Butler, like, after what they've been through the last few years. But when you're looking at that starting lineup and what they were able to do other than Tyler, it's like, you're not getting back in this game. Like, these are the guys that just got you back in this game. We're going to ride it out. And these are the guys that have actually looked competent offensively. I don't know. I just felt like, personally, it was still like part of it was a message, because there was points when they cut it to like 9 with like 4 minutes left. There was like, I'm like, okay, or what was it, like 5-6 minutes left? They cut it to something, and I was like, okay, Jimmy might check in here for Josh, because I thought they were going to watch Josh's minutes specifically, because that's what they've done with Jaime, with Jovic, with everybody. And then Josh is still in there, and I'm like, okay, this feels a little bit like Spo's just trying to send something toward the starters that didn't perform well.
I get that, and I definitely see the value in that, because the starters did not play very well outside of Tyler. I guess Bryant was fine, and I was going back and forth on this on playback, because the game seemed completely over before that, that run that I don't think any of us saw coming with that unit. Because again, the Bucks, at one point in that quarter when that run started, it was Giannis out there with other guys, and then it became 4 other starters without Giannis, and then it was all 5 starters. So like, that unit was doing it against different lineups, so I'm going to give them all the credit. But I just think, like, at a certain point, and it was around that time that you mentioned, Brady, when it was like around 5 minutes left in the game, I think they brought it down to 8. And they ended up bringing it back. I mean, bringing it down to 6 too. But when they brought it back down to 8, I'm like, there's 5 minutes left in the game. It's time to put in the guys you think can close. And that doesn't mean your starters. It doesn't mean it has to be the starting lineup. Put Jimmy in there. Put Hawkins back in there, because they took him out for some reason. I guess the minutes restriction thing factored in there. And Jovic played well when they took Hawkins out. Like, maybe you could have kept some of those guys in that were in that unit. And I totally see what you're saying as far as like sending the message, and like, they earned it. They earned that closing time. But like, it was over, and then all of a sudden, it's not like they already did so much for you, and asking them to then close out that game too is too much. Like, they were down like 25 or something. You brought it down to a single-digit game when all the odds were against you. Like, they did so much more than you could have asked for them. And at that point, like, the starters or some of those starters might have been able to redeem themselves if you let them close too. Like, that sounds like Jimmy Butler's music right there. Bring him right back at the end of a game when everybody else kind of kept them in there, kept the team in there, and let them close. But I don't know. I can see it both ways.
I have one thought on that though. I wonder if you don't bring Jimmy back because he's not ramped up at this point, and then you're bringing him in cold. I don't know. I don't know what the answer will be from Spo. Alex, I'm with you that Spo has done this before, and I've never seen them actually win like this, where it's just and you're not going to win the majority of those games. Like you fall behind that much, you're just not going to win. But I've seen it so many times where he'll ride that group until the very end, and if they'd gone to overtime, he probably, if he'd gone to overtime, he probably would have ridden the group into the first overtime, the second overtime, and deeper into the night. It's just what he does. All right, we do need to get to 2 more segments here, though. So let me mention another one here as we get into our play of the day.
And now it's time for the Insurance by Lynette Play of the Night, sponsored by InsuranceByLynette.com, an A-aggressive insurance agency. You can reach out to our friend Lynette at 954-581-8800. That's 954-581-8800, or InsuranceByLynette.com. That's InsuranceByLynette.com with 2 N's and 2 T's. Your best play for auto insurance, homeowners insurance, condo insurance, life insurance, or a retirement program. Reach out to Lynette at InsuranceByLynette.com.
All right, so there were a few options here. There's one positive one from the Heat, so we'll go to that one. But the one I did want to mention that jumped out to me at the time was Orlando Robinson, who did some good things tonight, which, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists in 26 minutes. But there was that one sort of wheel play where he turns around to pass to Duncan, and Duncan's not there. And they ended up getting away with it because I think Beasley missed both free throws, or at least one of the 2 free throws. So, but it jumped out because that's the problem. You fall behind by that much, like one little mistake. But this, again, comes to the fact that you've got guys playing together who we did not expect to be playing a ton of minutes together. And tonight you've got Orlando Robinson because of Bam's situation, playing 26 minutes, and he's out there with Duncan, and mistakes will be made. But the play we will mention was Duncan with an off-balance 3 to get them within 6, because that gave them hope. There was a big scream on our playback feed, and Duncan was pretty good tonight. 15 points, 3 of 7 from 3, and 6 of 10 overall. All right. This gives us an opportunity to get to our final segment of the night. Alex?
And now it's time for the official 5 on the Floor injury report, sponsored by our friend Eric Rubenstein, the personal injury attorney. Born and raised in Lauderdale, Florida, lives in Miami, went to St. Thomas. He's a South Florida guy and a huge Miami Heat fan. But the important thing is he can help you get your money that you deserve when something happens to you. So reach out to our guy, Eric Rubenstein. Again, ericrubenstein.com, or ask about me, I got you, on Instagram. And now, the injury report.
All right, this one goes a little bit longer tonight. I had a bunch of people texting me, like, how bad is the Bam injury? I don't think it's of any great significance. They're coming home to play Brooklyn on Wednesday night. You'll get Claxton in there. Bam has typically had pretty good success against Brooklyn. You hope you get him back for that game. But again, it's just been hard to get Jimmy, Bam, and the whole group out there together. And tonight in his place, Thomas Bryant, 10 points. I mean, they actually got, from the center position, 21 points and 9 rebounds and 7 assists if you combine Orlando Robinson and Thomas Bryant for their 48 minutes. Thomas Bryant, another one, and I mentioned this on playback, that, you start giving guys outsized roles, and that's where you start to have problems and you start to see some of the flaws. And I thought we saw some of that stuff from Bryant tonight, and I thought it was instructive that they actually made a bit more of a push with Orlando Robinson, who was not perfect either, but this is why Bam is Bam. I mean, they were going to miss Bam tonight, particularly against a team like this with Giannis, and I don't think they went into this thinking they were going to be guarding Giannis with Orlando Robinson a whole bunch when the season started. The other guy I want to focus on, and I'll let you guys comment on both situations. Still no Highsmith tonight. We knew that. Still no Caleb tonight. But they did get Josh Richardson back tonight. 3 of 7 from the floor, 23 minutes. He was in there at the end. 6 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. I thought he did some very Josh Richardson things, like where he got in the lane for that little push shot. His aggressiveness was obvious, particularly on the defensive end. But also there were some times he looked like he was running into guys, which you hope that clears up a little bit. Him and Duncan occupying the same spots on the floor at times, which was odd. I'll go to each of you guys on this. First, Brady, your thoughts on Josh, and then Alex, your thoughts on how they survived Bam tonight.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, that's pretty much a Heat debut where you're going to be running into guys in a motion offense. And I know he was already here, but it's still a different group of guys. And you mentioned occupying same spots on the floor. That's going to happen. But I did think he was generally good. Like, he was in the lineup that caused the comeback. He was the one that was guarding Damian Lillard on the comeback. He was the one that was kind of moving the ball pretty well and pushing things and kind of like he was getting it out to Jovic and letting him just kind of go. I just thought he was moving the ball decently well and doing some of those things. 23 minutes is funny because we keep seeing like them preserve Hawkins and Jovic. I mentioned this before, but it's funny how he comes back off of that injury and immediately just plays like just 23 minutes because the lineup was hot. But I mean, less Drew Smith. I think Heat fans would be happy about that. I don't think he did too many things with the ball in his hands, Josh, like Drew. I mean, there was a lot of Tyler tonight, so he had the ball in his hands a ton, even though he doesn't want to be called a point guard. But I think it was pretty much what the role we expect from Josh. It's a lot of off-ball stuff. It's a lot of coming off certain actions and just getting to that mid-range. You mentioned the push shot. I think that's going to be his shot that he goes to more than anything, more than stuff at the rim, more than threes probably. I think that little push shot, little elbow look is kind of going to be his biggest thing. But quickly, because I know we're going to wrap up here in a second, and we have not mentioned this guy. The guy that was not on the injury report and got put in the game with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Nikola Jovic. He needs to play. Like, I've really gotten to that point that he needs to play for this team in the rotation right now. You're watching this team play basketball, and it's ugly. It is just absolutely ugly. And if you're going to be ugly and horrid offensively, why not play the young guy who could potentially pop? Like, I just think that's the point you're at right now, where it's like you have to just kind of lean in this direction. If you're leaning into this roster,
which is the young guy that you think would pop the most right now, Brady? That's the question. Because Hawkins played 23 minutes tonight, 8 points, 2 rebounds. 3 assists. Jovic got the 7 minutes, 5 points, 4 rebounds when he played.
I thought he was good too. I think you could find a way to play both. And I was saying before the season that you'd play neither. But I just think when you're looking at this team, and also, I'm also saying this right now, because they're without Highsmith and without these other guys, there's no reason that at this current state that Jovic should not be playing. Especially when you're looking at if Kevin Love is having like maybe a bad start to a game, you play Kevin Love a quick 5-minute stint, and then you play Nikola Jovic. You find ways to play him. And I'm looking at this. We keep talking about, for one, tonight defensively, Bucks put up 97 points through 3 quarters. I'd say that could be on Bam's bulletin board for Defensive Player of the Year. We could kind of swoop back to that. But the offense has been the issue. And you're looking at a guy, he came in and he immediately pushes the ball. And that's something we know about. He is getting down the floor. He's putting his head down, and he's getting them into at least a certain different look offensively. But the thing that popped to me is he comes in the game with 8 minutes left, and he looked like really confident. Like, we talked about his confidence being high in camp and coming in. But like today was the day where I was like, he looks more confident than I've ever seen him. Like, he came in and he ran a pick and roll with Orlando Robinson and just flowed immediately into a pull-up 3 and nailed it. And I'm like, this is different. Like, this isn't something that we've seen a lot for him, where he's now coming in knowing I'm going to have this opportunity, this small opportunity of minutes. I need to do what I do. I need to get the ball and go. I need to stop sitting around and being an off-ball player, because that's not me. So I think that stuff stands out. And I just think you get to the point now where he just has to play basketball for this team. I just think at this current state.
Alex, on the Bam question, the distribution tonight was Bryant 22, Orlando Robinson 26. I mean, any issues with anything that was done there? Would you experiment with Jovic at the 5 maybe on nights that Bam doesn't play? Is there any other direction they can go?
Honestly, no. I think we've kind of, because that was something I was interested in, what you said there with Jovic, kind of headed into the season, is I was very much wondering, is Spo going to lean into him more as a 4 or as a 5, especially, with the added strength? I was wondering where that was going to lead to, and it seems very much so that, he's a 4. He's a 4 in this system. They're willing to play him next to another big, whether it's Bam or not. And obviously some of that is because of their injury situation, where they're kind of forced to make some of these decisions earlier than maybe they thought they had to. But 100% agree with Brady that him and Hawkins should be playing more in this time. It just sucks because of the injuries that they had, where they're kind of being preserved a little bit. But as far as the Bam thing, the only reason that Orlando Robinson got that many minutes is because of that crazy run that happened it was just kind of like garbage time. It was garbage time minutes, and then they made a run, and that's it. Like I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, Spo wants Orlando to play more than Thomas Bryant or anything like that. Bryant is obviously the backup 5. I think they were both fine. Like, not perfect. I think they were fine, considering they were both tasked with a whole lot. Like, they were both overmatched, and I think, like, just obviously out of their element as far as the pecking order on the team. And those guys had to be matched up with Giannis. It's a huge matchup problem, and I think they did their best. Like, there's the Heat still do all that wall stuff. It's just harder now because you have Dame Lillard to worry about, but they were still sending a ton of help. It was the bigs matched up onto Giannis, and a lot of help defense, and I think they kind of did the best they could on that end. And as far as like what they're missing with Bam, with Caleb, with missing Haywood, and all the time they miss Josh, like, that is so much. And then they had the game obviously where they missed Jimmy as well. Like, just so many bodies there of like so much of your defensive infrastructure just not there. And again, we were talking about this on playback. Like, the defense is supposed to carry the offense for this team, and it's kind of always the case. And when you're missing so many of those guys, I just think it gets out of hand quickly. And they were kind of hanging around all game. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I expected this to be a blowout. Like, they did a good job hanging around. It got out of hand for a little bit, and then they came back against all odds, right? So it was just a weird game, but I think they kind of did the best they could. Like, just when you talk about the offense, I think at a halftime they had about 3 shots attempted at the rim. The Heat did, and then they finished with 12, and I think a lot of that had to do with that run in the fourth quarter because they didn't necessarily go crazy offensively in the third quarter. But you compare that to the Bucks shot profile, 30 shots at the rim, right, where the Heat are taking 12, and then the Heat are taking twice as many mid-range shots, and 40 to 20. And then the Heat ended up making some of those threes in the fourth quarter. But it, like Brady said earlier, like, throughout the game, it was very ugly. And again, 3 shots at the rim at halftime. That's all Jimmy, man. Like, that's Jimmy's job. Bam is not there. Tyler has done his damnedest. Like, he has tried his hardest to play through contact at the rim, to get to the rim. He's even, like, not taking some of the shots against the drop that he's taken before. Like Brady mentioned, a lot of it against the drop tonight was floaters and trying to get to the rim. So, like, he is very much doing his best out there to create rim pressure, but it was not enough. And I think, on a night without Bam, you needed Jimmy to do more. And it all comes right back to that. They did their best outside of him.
All right, well, 2 things. One is Greg's going to be able to hold this over me because we went 5 minutes longer than we did with Greg hosting. So obviously I didn't move this quickly enough. So we'll do this in the future. And the second thing is we got through a 32-minute podcast, and I think I mentioned Dame Lillard's name one time, which was kind of the point tonight because I didn't want to rub that in on Heat fans. But I'll just mention it again. 25 points, 35 minutes. Pretty pedestrian game for Dame. You know where this game was lost, actually, against the Bucks? Bobby Portis and Cameron Payne and Pat Connaughton had 35 points on 14 of 20 shooting tonight. That's too efficient for the other bench. And actually, it's the reason I like this Milwaukee team better than Boston, because I just think their bench is much deeper. And Bucks were able to get Dame and still fill in a roster. But I don't want to rub it in on everybody tonight. All right, we'll be back before the Heat play the Nets on Wednesday night. For Brady, for Alex, thanks. Also, do want to mention Rock Esports Center. The tournament, next 2K tournament, is November 18th. So we'll have watch party on that beforehand, and the watch party as well. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.